My story begins at 16. I was born and raised in Essex, and raised for all of my life up until that point in my hometown, Southend-on-Sea, which is in Essex. And as a teenager, I'd experienced things which were things that a teenager normally shouldn't have to see. My friends, who were my English non-Muslim friends, had been stabbed on multiple occasions on different times. They'd been stabbed simply for associating themselves with me. They were hounded by a group of racist thugs known as Combat 18, and the 18 stands for the letter 1 stands for the number 1 stands for the letter A in the alphabet, and the number 8 stands for the letter H to represent the initials of Adolf Hitler. So Combat 18 is an organization. We were young teenagers below the age of 16, and these were grown men who would ride around in white vans, hunting us with a view to stabbing my friends. And their policy was to stab white people to intimidate them from associating themselves with people like myself. Having experienced all of this, and having heard their brags and boasts about how they had contacts in the police, and having witnessed that after time and time again, charges were in fact dropped against these people, and not one single conviction was brought against them. And having lived through the controversy of the Stephen Lawrence case, where the official government report discovered that there was institutional racism to be found in the police forces, and having seen that Stephen Lawrence's case, again, did not lead to any conviction. Stephen Lawrence was, for those of you who don't know, was a black teenager who was murdered in the UK in a racially aggravated assault. And that led me to feel those examples, that treatment led me to feel quite disenfranchised with my society, with my environment. I didn't feel that I belonged, and that led to a crisis in identity and a crisis in knowing who exactly I was. Was I British? Was I English? Was I Muslim? I really didn't have answers to these questions, and I didn't feel that I belonged, and I didn't feel that I was accepted. And that was made worse. These feelings were sort of intensified by the police treatment that I received. On a number of occasions, not just once, I've been falsely arrested. I've never been convicted of any criminal offence anywhere in the world. Even my imprisonment in Egypt was for a political offence, and Egypt is a country that does differentiate between those two. It's under emergency law at the moment, and somebody who's convicted for a political offence can still stand for public office after he leaves prison, whereas somebody who's convicted for a criminal offence cannot. So even in the UK, the first time, in fact, that I have been arrested at gunpoint wasn't in Egypt. It was on the streets of my hometown in Essex. I was arrested and pushed to the floor with guns put to my head, arrested for suspicion of armed robbery because I was 15 at the time. My 16-year-old brother had been seen playing with a plastic gun, and a lady saw him and decided that that meant he was about to rob a bank. She informed the police, and they mounted a day-long surveillance operation. And in the evening, after we were coming out of a pool club, they shone the police helicopter spotlight on our car. My friend, who was older than us, was able to drive, and they arrested us at gunpoint. We were released the next morning with an apology, and the broken plastic gun was handed back to us. And I remember asking if there's anything at all that we did that was wrong, and they said, no, you've done nothing wrong. It's simply a case of mistaken identity and mistaken belief that you were about to do something that you clearly weren't. And they were the words of the police officer I spoke to. But it made me really feel bitter that children who were playing, I was minor, I wasn't even allowed to be interviewed without the presence of my parents because I was below age. Children who were playing with toys in the early 90s, before Islamist terrorism was a big problem on the world stage, way before. Children who were playing with toys which were freely available in the shops were to be treated in this way. It led me to feel that I did not belong.